All right, gang, it's February 4th still. This is my second podcast of the day. Coach Holmes has been on a tear. I mean, we had that first conversation about the staff, which was great. We did the X's and O's. You're coming back from, where the hell were you today? Salt Lake City? Flew through the air, now you're back in Colorado?
In Salt Lake City. Yeah, seeing some customers and now back, and let's talk some ball.
Back in the saddle. So we got a couple things we're going to do. I had an earlier conversation today with Ryan Castle. He was at the press conference today. If you have not seen it, it'll be linked here in the description. I highly encourage you all to go back and listen to it. I mean, we could spend a couple minutes on it, Coach. It's kind of hard to explain it to Virginia Tech fans, because Virginia Tech fans, like, anything that happens with Virginia Tech is our world, and like, you're like, this is such a big deal, and you almost have to like explain to people to care a little bit less. And myself too, like, you're like, oh, like, our entire world is Virginia Tech. In this case, this press conference where Brent Pry is taking the stage as a dismissed coach from the year prior, it truly is one of the craziest stories in all of college football. And there are worlds where this goes sideways, where it's awkward,
Yes.
where a question is answered oddly. And I did not get that sense at all. I did not feel that way. His body language was great. His excitement was great. But I just wanted to get from you kind of what your thoughts were going into it and how you thought it went.
Yeah, I think it's really a kind of a testament to how James Franklin runs a program, that you have somebody who is dismissed and they are willing. I mean, and granted, they got into the whole thing about, how his family was, going to stay there anyway for a year, because I think one of his daughters was going to graduate. I think that was kind of the deal, for at least a year. And now that doesn't have to happen. And that's, part of that is like, coach looking out for, for one of his assistants, a guy that he likes working with. But also, it's a testament to James Franklin, how he wants to run his program, how he has a group of people that he cares about, that he really enjoys working around, that he can, but more importantly, that he can trust, that he knows that if Brent Pry's there, the defensive side of the ball is going to be taken care of. And I know from a Virginia Tech perspective, based on what we've seen for the last 3 years, there could be some skepticism with that. But he even went into that in the press conference, talking about how he didn't spend as much time in the room as he wished he had, and and that all the other people don't really understand how much extra stuff goes into being a head football coach. I mean, and I've never done it at a college level, but even at the high school level, you're being pulled in 1,000 directions, and you don't get to do the teaching part of it. And if that's where you excel, that's why the Bud Fosters and the Mickey Andrews of the world, and some of those guys that have been career assistants and done really, really well at it, maybe they'll try it one time, but then they want to go back, and shoot, I can tell you right now, getting back into the baseball world as an assistant, it's so much better, because just get to teach. You don't have to worry about all the extra stuff. And I think that it can be overwhelming. And so I think it was really, really good that Pry was willing to, and I don't even think it's pride that you got to swallow. I think that's not even a really good expression. It's more like, let's get back to what I know that I can do really well. I don't have to go through the hassle and stress of moving. And it's a system that I know that I can work well in and function really well in. So I think it's going to end up being a really good situation. But yes, I agree. It's weird. It's strange. It's never been done before. But it really is a 1 in a million type of situation. I mean, I can't off the top of my head think of bringing in a coach who was an assistant at a previous school and then bringing in the head coach from that same school in the next term. I can't think of any time that's happened.
No, I can't either. And again, I almost said, I don't want to do this, but I kind of do. I kind of do want to take a little bit of a victory lap is the wrong word. I got to think of a new one. But we said this previously. Like, if he wasn't hired here, he was either taking a year off or his family would have stayed in Blacksburg, which, by the way, is not uncommon for college coaches, for the coach to leave and the family to stay behind. That said, he had offers to go coach elsewhere. At least that's what he says. I'm not going to call him a liar. I think that's absolutely true. And if Coach Franklin was going to take this job elsewhere, he more than likely would have tapped Coach Pry and been like, look, I want you to be my defensive coordinator. So that's overwhelmingly obvious and something that is true, and I'm very glad that he's here. The second part that I want to point out is that Coach Franklin assumed that Coach Pry would be not cool with essentially taking this role if he went to Virginia Tech. He mentioned something along the lines of, Coach, I'm considering taking the Virginia Tech job. That's probably not something that you would do. And Coach Pry literally raised his hand, at least this is how he tells it, and says, no, actually, I would be interested. And again, it matters how you treat people. Like,
Yes.
The way that you treat people, I cannot say this enough. Hate the result. Do not hate the person. We're going through this with Neo Abdallas right now on the basketball team. And of course, it's a completely different, weird, crazy situation. But, I've been called fan police before, and, I've been this and that and the other. And at the end of the day, to think that these coaches or these players or anybody else isn't reading what people say about them on the internet, and I have to tip my cap to so many Virginia Tech fans who have never met Brent Pry, who recognize Coach Pry for what he was, which is a good man. The players all liked him and poured everything he could into Virginia Tech ever since he had the job. He wasn't out there not trying, obviously wanted to win these games, so let's put that in a box. I also have to tip my cap to the donors and the people close to the university who have access to Coach Pry, who he has mentioned reached out to him after he was fired. So there's that entire piece of it.
Yes.
And then the third piece is Whit Babcock, who went to his house and visited with him after firing him. So, again, if this is not it's such a grand slam. It's a representation of so many qualities that you want to see out of people. It's a representation of loyalty that is so taken for granted in this age of college football. And it's a perfect example of when you treat people right, you never know when somebody might end up back on the track. And this is the most blatant example of that happening.
Never, ever burn bridges. Like in whatever realm you're in, life lesson for everybody, write it down. Never burn bridges anywhere, because you never know where you're going to run into people again.
And it's also just not good practice. So I'll get off my soapbox on that. A couple of other things on Pry, and not to take a page from the Bill Simmons book here, but I had my body language doctor glasses on. It's because when he walks to the dais, you're like, I'm gonna make a snap judgment of if he thinks this is weird or not. Yeah. And he didn't. Like he's so genuine and honestly so cool and just like himself. It looked like he hadn't skipped a beat. It looked like he was getting up there like for the next year. And I think that attitude just was displayed there. And the one thing that I saw out of him that honestly I hadn't seen out of Coach Pry since probably 2023 when we went on that winning streak, when he started talking about, I'm not going to have to convince people to come here. Sean Spencer and I did 40 sacks every single year, 5 years. Like, you could see him getting that, like, fire in his belly about it. And when he was talking about, I'm going back to coaching football, like, I'm so excited for him, man. And you can tell that this isn't like, it doesn't come across as him doing James Franklin a favor or James Franklin doing him a favor. There's way too much reputation on the line to have this be a good old buddies situation. So I'm thrilled. Can't wait to watch play out.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, it looked like, and kind of go with what you're saying, there was a 1-ton weight that has been removed from his shoulders. There's no longer the burden of all the extra responsibility that's dragging him down, and he gets to go back to do what he loves to do. And I think it's going to be great. I think you're going to go out there and you're going to see, because honestly, probably one of the better, more sound defenses we had was that first year he was here in 22. Record doesn't show it, obviously, but go back and look. We were kind of outmanned in some spots, but we were never out of position really. Because he was actively calling the defense and spending more time there. And so I think you're going to, and he kind of led into that a little bit. He says we're going to go about 70% of what we tried to do, what we did at Penn State, and then we're going to do a little bit of what we tried to set out to do here in Blacksburg. So I it's going to be, I think Hokie fans are going to be pleasantly surprised by what defense is going to be put out there.
Yeah, and here's the last thing that I'll say. And I was trying to think about like what's the appropriate way to word this, because I mean, me and you, we get on here, we're on a podcast, talk about a program we really love, and there are a lot of people who really genuinely love this program. And I was kind of thinking about it because I don't want to come from the standpoint of like fans' opinions don't matter. It doesn't weigh in. It's irrelevant. Like, because that's not necessarily true. But here is what's true. I think common consensus for at least 95% of Virginia Tech fans is that you are entrusting James Franklin to fly this plane. Okay, and we haven't had somebody that's as qualified as James Franklin to fly this plane. Virginia Tech, the program is for the fans, is for the alumni, is for the letterman, it's for the people who will root for this team until they're 6 feet underground. The team that represents the program is what matters when it comes to it's awkward. It's what matters when it comes to this is who I decide my defensive coordinator is going to be. It matters that's what that stuff matters to. And as a fan, you have the right with your ticket sales, with how loudly you cheer, with how much you care to get back to Blacksburg during the season, you can vote your pleasure or displeasure in that way. But that is a team matter. Brent Pry being there and how the players feel about it and the coaches feel about it is a team matter. On 3rd and 6, on 4th and 2, on the fourth quarter in a 6-3 football game where you need one stop to win the game, nobody's going to be thinking about how awkward it is that Brent Pry is wearing the headset. Yes. There's not going to be one person thinking that.
Can we get somebody in the A gap to make the tackle? That's the only thing that matters.
That's my thing, man. Is leave team matters to the team, and those will play out how they may. I have my opinion on how it's going to go. You can have your opinion on how it's going to go. And ultimately, that's a team matter. The program is what's owned, and ultimately what fans are rooting for and rooting against, and the team is the one who generates the results. I may be overthinking that. That may sound incredibly stupid on second listen, but that's the best I could come up with.
No, I don't think so. And I think it's also kind of clear that, you had it listed here in our breakdown, but it's definitely Franklin's program. You can tell he's got his, it's not even just his fingers and everything. He runs everything. There is nothing that is going to slip by him with regards to, honestly, I'm not even just saying the football team, the athletic department. I mean, we got the softball coach doing interviews talking about James Franklin. We have, he's out there celebrating with the women's basketball team after beating Virginia. Like, it's incredible. So like everything within the department now, he is a fixture. I think that's just so incredibly refreshing. We got a taste of it when Pry came on, about being bigger than the football program, but this is that next step.
Oh yeah. It's exciting though. It's somebody at the helm that's driving the ship that, number one, has the gravitas that people will listen to him. I don't think that there was anybody employed by Virginia Tech that would have had the ability to march into a room and be like, you're putting HVAC in the indoor. Like, that's a thing that we obviously should have done, but we almost got to the point of defending it as like, man, that's like soft. Do we need to have it heating in the indoor facility? It's like, well, if we want to be a big time program and we want to look big time and smell big time and feel big time, yes, you should probably have heating in the indoor facility, right? So,
no one really asked a question when Dabo said, "Hey, we need a slide in our football building to go from the first floor to the second floor." Like,
well, the people from the outside made fun of it, but I mean, I'm sure he doesn't give a damn about it at all.
This is what I need. I'm gonna get it.
That's right. Last couple things on it. Again, just it's about the team. I trust the team. You heard Aiden Green said it. He said that the air just feels differently in the building. And I'll tell you what, even being 130 or 140 miles south in Charlotte, everything that I've heard about in Blacksburg is just it's a completely different situation. And think about it, like I almost compare it to especially now, and this isn't saying that he doesn't care about current players, he doesn't care about current staff, he doesn't care about current support staff, right? But think about your job. If you were working somewhere and they went through layoffs, or you got a new boss, or you got a new boss who has a great resume, and you're like, I definitely want to be on this team because it's going to be a top performer. You're walking a little faster. You're standing up a little straighter. You're showing up to your Zoom meetings with your freaking buttons buttoned. Like, I got to imagine that entire building is operating in that regard. And I'm just telling you, it hasn't operated that way in a long time. And that's no fault of any former coach or anything. That's just what you get when you bring in somebody like that. So, anyway. Okay, so the plan for this podcast, Mike, I want to run through. We got the finalized listing of the coaching staff. Let's go down from coordinators to then assistants to then analysts and that. So I'll let you drive the boat, and I'll weigh in with any points on each one. But you can drive the boat here.
All right, so let's just start on the offensive side. Obviously, Ty Howell got up there and talked today, talked a little bit about his philosophy, talked about what was the importance of having a guy like Grunkmeyer, coming in, somebody who he's familiar with, who he's, had some, talked about his play calling experience, and talked about how, his first 3 starts were against Iowa, Penn State, and Indiana. And so, he's got some big game experience. When you go think about how he's going to compete in the ACC, something that really hadn't been talked about a whole lot, he beat Clemson. That they've been the standard bearer and they beat him in the bowl game. So it's we have a quarterback on our roster that is 1-0 against Clemson. So that's a big thing for us to have. So again, he's got ties in the footprint, right? So he's been recruiting kind of the DMV area when he was with Penn State. But also his dad is a longtime high school coach in Bunn, North Carolina, outside of Fayetteville. We go right down 95 past south of the border. When you come across from South Carolina, it's right there. That's kind of where Bunn is. So he's got ties to the Carolinas, ties to the footprint. So he's gonna have some connection there. I really think the biggest thing that I got from him today was when he started talking about teaching in chunks. I really loved that. It wasn't like, hey, here's the whole playbook, it's up to you to go learn it. Instead, no, we're gonna say, hey, here's the basics. This is what we want to do in our zone scheme. This is what we want to do in our gap scheme. This is what we want to do in our quick game. And we're gonna learn these individual sections at a time, and we're gonna master it before we move on to the next one. So, kind of understands a little bit about the teaching and the building process of how to kind of put things together. So I was really happy to hear that. And the fact that both he and Franklin, it seems that they both, well, in James's words, we see the game the same way. So, and I kind of interpreted that being like, okay, well, I'm going to kind of tell him what we want to do this week, and and you need to figure it out how we want to get this done type of situation. So, I really liked seeing that. So, after that, obviously Matt Moore, we know what he can do in 1 year. I mean, taking a piecemeal. Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Real quick, going on Matt Moore and also talking about Ty. What I think is going to be so important, and on the offensive side of the ball, I think it rings the truest, is with Coach Franklin mentioning how important it is to go 3 deep. So the way that he broke it down was basically you need to be able to win a football game with your first string and your second string, and you need to feel really good about the future of your third string. And just look at the roster that we have on just the offensive side of the ball. Like the fact that all of these young transfers from Penn State, and especially when you're getting in these keyboard warrior arguments with Penn State, and they're like, oh, you got this offensive lineman who redshirted and didn't play. Here's what matters to me. It is a large human that was good enough to earn a scholarship from Penn State that is on campus right now learning the offense. Like that's what matters, right? And that to me is more valuable than getting somebody out of a transfer portal over the summer, which allegedly will not happen given the new calendar. We'll see how that works. Yeah. Or if you're getting somebody from high school who isn't going to show up until summer session 1 or summer session 2. So that's kind of where I'm at on that entire thing. Is you've brought in the talent floor You forget about the ceiling. The talent floor has been risen so much to the point where if you listen to Nick Saban talk about his programs, and obviously the sport's different with the transfer portal, I understand that. But number one, development is something very much still on James Franklin's mind, and I think he has the relationships with the players that will prompt players to want to stick around, so there's that piece of it. And then the second piece of it is, if you have the opportunity to where your first-string guy knows that if he goes out there and loafs it at practice, he's going to be moved down the depth chart. Like, here's the reality. That hasn't been the situation for a long time. I'm not going to come out here and name names, but you can pick out a few positions where we had one guy who was going to start on Saturday. If he went out naked to practice and didn't do anything and just sat on the sideline and kicked the football around, he was going to start on Saturday. That's not going to be the case in this program anymore. And I'm got to tell you, that's not the reality for a lot of teams. Like, just that is going to make this team monumentally better.
Yes, and it's to go along with that, there's that constant level of competition, and I think that's what you're going to see because and he talked specifically about the arrangement of our facilities where there's only so many. So much time in a week that gets given to scrimmage. So you can get from the indoor to the outdoor practice facility to the stadium, you can utilize multiple facilities at different times and be able to get things in lined up in a certain way where you're always competing, you're always active, you're always doing something, even in the off season. And I think that's going to be just tremendous for building that internal competition where, hey, you boof 3 snaps on Monday, guess what? You're probably not going to be in on Tuesday with the ones. You have to earn your way back, and it's that expecting excellence is that's the whole do your job mentality. You don't have to use the Sabanism, but all successful programs have that. Where it's not just okay. I signed so and so NIL deal. I'm guaranteed a start for 12 games. It's got to, barring injury, it's got to be something where, we'll get you in the door. We'll set you up to make sure that you're not eating out of trash cans. But in order to get on the field, to show what you can do to get to that next level, you're going to have to earn it Monday through Thursday. Mm-hmm. So,
didn't mean to cut you off, but let's keep going down with the offensive staff.
Yeah. So, really like being able to keep, and I'll talk real quick about the 2 guys that we kept on. So Matt Moore and Fontel Mines. So Matt Moore having 1 year in, being able to put together what did Hawk average last year? Almost 6 yards a carry. I believe it was something close to that, behind a piecemeal offensive line that, because of injuries and everything else, we had to kind of throw things together. We're moving people around into weird alignments and positions. You have tackles playing guard and moving left to right side, which as a former offensive lineman, that's tough in and of itself. I think showing what you could do there. I think that's your resume. All I had to show you was what I can do as an offensive line coach is what we did last year, let alone what I can do with some stability like I did at West Virginia, putting guys in the show. So keeping him there is great, and we'll talk more about some of the assistants that he has helping him out, from West Virginia. So he's got that continuity there. But then Fontel Mines, Franklin mentioned that he wanted to keep Fontel Mines here because he wanted to hire him a couple of years ago, and he was able to get a decent pay raise at Tech as a result of that conversation. So he is a fantastic recruiter. He's really good at getting it, and he kind of runs that 757 area, is able to get into some of the homes and get into the high schools, got a good rapport with the kids. And so I think having him there, being kind of the offensive recruiting coordinator, working with the wide receivers, he's rooted in the Commonwealth, and so I think there's a lot of positives to keeping him on. Danny O'Brien from Kernersville, North Carolina, East Forsyth, Fighting Eagle. So played for James Franklin. He's going to be running the quarterback room. He's got a relationship with Grunkmeyer. He's got a relationship with Bryce Baker, from having recruited him out of high school, but also they went to the same high school, so there's a relationship there. And, he knows what Franklin expects out of the quarterback room. Going back 15 years to 2009 when he played for him at Maryland. So like 15 years of kind of knowing what to expect, what Franklin expects out of his quarterbacks. And so he knows how to prepare them. He knows how to get from point A to point B with these guys. I think you're going to see a quarterback room because again, no offense to anybody else that we've had. We haven't had a true quarterback coach in a long time at Virginia Tech. And it shows in our offensive production from that position. I think we're going to be better at reading coverages. We're going to be better at pre-snap reads. I think we're going to be better at kind of examining across the board, making quick decisions. And I think it's going to be phenomenal. He's going to be a big part of that. He's going to be that mouthpiece because he's worked with Hal. He's worked with Franklin. So being able to relay that message into the quarterback room and know what to expect, I think it's going to be a really, really solid piece there.
We have not had, and you and I have talked about this for a while, but we have not felt like there has been an extension of the offensive coordinator on the field for a long time. It has very much been call a play, and the play is either doomed or not doomed before you even step up to the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
And that's been the situation. And again, I've been on record as saying for a long time that the development or lack thereof at the quarterback position is not as simple as like, oh, this quarterback's not good. Like, I think in a lot of chances, they just really didn't have a damn chance, right? And the fact that we're going to have an actual system and somebody who's taught the position before, again, knows what the expectation is from what practice is supposed to look like, what expectations are, and what the offense is supposed to run like and look like. I know we're not talking about the presser anymore. If the attention to detail of when the press conference starts and ends is a 10th of the attention to detail, if we get a 10th of that in how we're teaching our quarterbacks, quarterback play will instantaneously be better.
Yeah. And I think not only with that, but I think, too, having somebody who's familiar with the system, familiar with the terminology, who's had 6-7 games of starting experience at Penn State coming into here, he's going to be the guy that Bryce Baker, AJ Brand, Keldon Ryan, and Hoon, those guys are going to be able to kind of get all of that and be able to. And we have a 5-man quarterback room right now, barring because the transfer portal is done. Hopefully, there's not another one. But having 5 quarterbacks in there that are going to be able to learn from this and see this is the example that we're going to set. This is somebody who's who's played and performed at a high level. They were one miraculous catch away there from beating the national champions. So there is, and they played better every week up there. As the season went on. So I think it's going to be really, really good for from the quarterback position. And the last one I want to talk about is Norvell McKenzie. And I know you want to say something about him too, but he got brought in from Georgia Tech. If one thing that was always carried over from the Paul Johnson days, even through Jeff Collins and everybody else, was the fact that Georgia Tech puts dudes on Sundays from the running back position. Jahmyr Gibbs, before he was at Alabama and got really seen, was at Georgia Tech. There is a legacy of, and I don't think McKenzie coached him, but there's a legacy of those guys. I'm not saying that either that our previous running backs coach did anything wrong. He's got himself a job down in South Florida. He's going to do great. Bringing this guy in, not only that, but you're bringing him in from a past couple years upper echelon conference foe, and you're taking somebody from that position, and he's going to be the only voice in that room. There's no assistant running backs coach. So I think you're really going to see what they do really well at Georgia Tech. They catch balls out of the backfield, right? And that was Jamal Haynes last year, caught the ball really well out of the backfield, runs really tough in between the tackles, but can also get you in space. Really emphasizing footwork, emphasizing blocking in the passing game, something that we've kind of missed on the last few years as well. I think that's going to be a really big piece, and I think that was why they kind of targeted him and said, hey, we want you here. We want you here to kind of help with that, because in order for us to be successful, we're going to have to move the ball vertically downfield. Hal mentioned that in the press conference. But in order to do that, we have to be able to protect him. So I know you had something you wanted to add about McKenzie as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise of the entire staff being released is the fact that he's the associate head coach, and it's more so just like there's so many coaches that have left good positions to come here. Was very interested to see who was going to get that role. And to be honest, I thought it was going to be Coach Spencer who was going to get that tag for the associate head coach. And honestly, doing some self-reflection here, I really think it's this simple. I think a lot of people want to work for James Franklin. I think that's kind of what it is. I don't think James Franklin's kind of in a position where he needs to sweeten the pot. And obviously these coaches are being well compensated, and the money has to make sense for anybody to make a move. But, I think a lot of people, myself included, was like, oh man, we're getting Coach Spencer because we'll give him a raise and we'll give him that associate head coach title. Right. And, that's probably not how any of these conversations went. I think these are just a bunch of guys, not to be corny, but a band of brothers who believe in each other, who have done it together. They like working for this guy. And, again, these guys have a chip on their shoulder, man. That is the most exciting part. Every one of these dudes have come to a place. The place itself has a chip on their shoulder. From the athletic director down to the players, everybody has a chip on their shoulder. And but that was the biggest surprise, was seeing that he had gotten the associate head coach tab, because I'm not sure that was even being considered or talked about. But I mean, that was surprising to me.
Well, I do know that there is a connection that goes back from when he was at Vanderbilt. McKenzie worked with Franklin at Vanderbilt, so there is a little bit of a connection there. But I think also, as a head coach, when there's somebody who's valuable that you want, sometimes you do got to sweeten the pot a little bit and add that, because no one's gonna want to move their family for a lateral move a lot of times. But I think there's also that situation where there's a connection there, and it's not like he's only hiring his best buddies. He's trying to get the best people for the position that he can find, that are willing to make the move to Blacksburg, Virginia. And it's not a we love it because we're a part of it, but it's not a target destination. It's not Miami. It's you gotta want to be there. So I think that's really, really good. So off the field roles. So these are guys that are going to be kind of helping on the field during practice, obviously, but not so much really, during the in-game situation. Matt Moore has two guys with him, Ryan Alexander and Jens Danielson. They were both with Matt Moore at West Virginia. And so they're going to be helping him on the offensive line. So you got, along with, I believe there's one other offensive lineman. Anyway, that's going to help. But those two guys there having a continuous message, probably going to have one guy that's going to work with centers, one guy's going to work with guards, one guy's going to work with tackles. And you have consistent message all the way through. Those guys know Moore's terminology. They know everything else. And I think it's just going to be real solid to have, kind of a three-headed monster in there, helping with those guys. Because again, most important position on the field is going to be your five guys on the offensive line and your four guys on defensive line. If you can't be strong there, you're not going to be strong anywhere. So, do you have anything you want to say about that?
I was just going to say, and one, on the previous subject, I wasn't saying anything along the lines of Coach McKenzie or anybody isn't qualified to be the associate head coach. It's just there are so many people that were qualified to do it. On the flip side of that, what I want to say is, back when I was playing, this is a sign of how the sport in general has changed, and also how Virginia Tech's investment has changed, because I understand that there were limitations on how many folks could have this role and now have it. But back in the day, man, like my first 2 years at being at Tech, like it was Stacy Searles and it was Coach No Sal. And honestly, that was pretty damn good because Stacy Searles is one of the best in the country right now, and Greg No Sal has been at Bowling Green and at a couple of other stops. But the fact that there's three people that are gonna have a consistent message just with the offensive line in general, and that's not including like a carryover from tight end. I mean, that's wild. And also to consider the fact that back in the day, so many assistants were GAs. And that's nothing against GAs because GAs work their absolute tail off.
Yes.
But a lot of GAs would just be doing it to get a degree to go do something other than football. So these are not just assistants who are trying to pay for their masters. These are assistants who, are probably qualified to go coach at a lower level somewhere else and are doing it for experience, but very much are going to be a part of it moving forward. So
yes,
it is a completely different language that we're speaking from a resources and staffing perspective than what we're used to.
yes. And to go along with that, you got Mike Moisinko, who's going to help out Danny O'Brien with quarterbacks. He was a former passing game coordinator and play caller at UConn. He played at Maryland in the early 2000s. So there's a connection there. Somebody else who's had play calling experience, who's also going to be working, helping out with the quarterbacks. You got Cam Phillips, all-time Virginia Tech legend, right? Who's going to be helping out with receivers.
I know Cam well. We came into Tech at the same time. First of all, probably the most underappreciated Virginia Tech offensive player of the 21st century. Like, he's definitely on that short list. Like, he is a bona fide, in my opinion, like fourth or fifth best player at his position in school history. He's the all-time leading receiver. And I mean, if you ask anybody that I played with, him and Isaiah Ford were the two guys who knew basically what every single player on a skill position on offense was able to do. He, from an understanding the game perspective and relating to the players' perspective, man, I am thrilled that he is still on this staff, and he's going to make a huge, huge difference.
Yes, where Mines' background is he was a tight end, right? So our wide receivers probably block better than any wide receiving unit in the conference. And Cam Phillips, his route running when he was a player was outstanding. So you have somebody who can really teach the route running side and someone who can really teach the blocking side of it. And so you get a very well-rounded receiving core having both of those guys there.
And don't forget, he didn't stop playing when he was done in college either. He was one of the best players in the XFL for a couple of years. So he played professionally for a little while. I know that Isaiah has made a couple of trips back to Blacksburg. I don't want to speak for him, but I would assume that he'll be making some of those trips back at a minimum to see Cam. So again, you're balancing kind of that. Yes, you're qualified for this role. Also, you have familiarity with Virginia Tech and obviously a way of recruiting. And if I'm not mistaken, yes, Cam Phillips played at DeMatha in Maryland. So another recruiting in that is huge for that staff.
Yes, that's fantastic. But the thing that impresses me the most about this list of, was there 10 or 11 off-field assistants? We have 1, 2, 3 analysts on the offensive side of the ball. 2 specifically, their job is to look at the opposition's defense. So they are offensive analysts for defense. So you have Brian Christ, who has been with the program. I believe he was the coach at Blacksburg High School, if I'm not mistaken, before he came over. I think so, when Pry got here. And he's familiar with the run game. So he might be helping with the interior, with the front seven. You have Danny Rocco, who is a Virginia coaching legend. Liberty, Richmond, VMI for the last 3 seasons. He's also been at Penn State as an offensive analyst. So there is another connection there to James Franklin. But he is a legend in the state as far as coaching goes. Having him as a defensive analyst for offense, you're looking at these guys, and I'll talk more about him when we get to the defensive side of the ball. But then also you're going to have you have Warren Ruggiero from Wake Forest, where he's going to be an analyst. He's the guy who helped develop the slow mesh offense that Clausen ran forever. And
this is not, that hire is not talked about nearly enough.
No.
By the way, there are 3 or 4 guys on here that are vastly overqualified, in my opinion, just based upon their
Yes.
resume to be in the roles that they're in. And I do want to clarify one thing. I know who you're mixing them up with. The name is just stuck in the back of my brain. So here's Brian Critt's background. So began his career as a grad assistant at Virginia Tech in '94, returned as an offensive analyst and co-quarterbacks coach for 5 seasons, 2021 to 25. But before Virginia Tech, he was a player of personnel and offensive assistant at Nebraska in 2014, wide receiver coach at Bridgewater College. He also served as Louisiana Lafayette 2002 to 2006 in 2 separate stints. This is awful the way that I'm going through it, by the way. But TLDR, he was
Yes.
not at Blacksburg High School.
No, there was. I know. There was. I thought that. I apologize for mixing that up. So, but yeah, but
Coach,
basically,
New York Giants legend Victor Cruz at UMass, by the way. Did want to add that.
there you go. But these analysts, that are kind of way overqualified. This is going to be something that is going to be just a wealth of resources for a guy like Hal, who's coming into a first time as a full-time major play caller and coordinator. So being able to have all those minds to be able to bounce stuff off of, I think it's going to be a tremendous asset.
Well, think about it this way too, and again, so much of this has to do with the call it what it is, lack of investment and lack of resources that we had to pour into a coaching staff that looks like this. When Coach Pry first got here, the adult in the room was Joe Rudolph. Like there are multiple people who have experience where you're like, oh, that is an adult in this room that is on this staff. For the entire staff 4 years ago, that was Joe Rudolph. We have adults in the room that are analysts on this staff on both sides of the ball. So that's again, it's hard to wrap your brain around it. The distance that we have covered from then to now.
Yeah, just the overall depth of the staff is just leaps and bounds from where we have been for the last decade. So going over to the, do you have anything else you want to add on offensive side before we go over to defense?
No. I think it's a perfect mix of continuity and also, look, the position groups that, yeah, it's a good mix of continuity, ability to recruit, and any positions that you may be like, I wish they had a little more experience coaching in that room. You either have an analyst to back them up or something else. I think that you have that with Coach Franklin as the head coach and the offensive coordinator, and then you also have that with Cam Phillips and Fontel Mines. So no other notes on that.
So all right, so let's go over the defense. Yeah, we've talked about Coach Pry at length, so we'll kind of skip over that. But he is going to be coaching the linebackers as well. I think that's going to be a tremendous asset for us to have your coordinator coaching a position that he knows very, very well, who's put guys in the league and from that position. So he can be more hands-on. He knows exactly what he wants to see out of that group, and it's not going to be just, hey, this is what I want to see. It's up to you guys to go do it. He's going to be out there on the field during these inside run sessions, during these skeleton sessions, looking at what the linebackers are doing and being able to correct on the field based on what his vision is for that week.
So that's what I wanted to say is he alluded to this in the presser where he said, look, transparently, I thought I was going to spend more time in the room than I was able to, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's easy to look back and be like, oh, Coach Pry's a linebacker coach. The linebackers were bad. I don't think that he was spending any reasonable, good amount of time with the linebackers. And there were a bunch of issues that needed to be handled on top of NIL, parents, administration. Like, there's a million other things to be concerned with. He's not developing linebackers from day one to day 365. He probably wanted to and had alluded to that ad nauseum in his press conference. So he's going to be able to go back to doing that. And again, go back and look at his resume of the players that he did develop when that was his sole responsibility. Didn't forget how to do it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think there's going to be a situation, we're going to look back in years after we've won ACC championships and, made the college football playoff. Yes, I am saying that that's going to happen. We're going to go back and look at this and say, okay, we kind of knew this was the deal, but going back and saying, oh, maybe I shouldn't have hired 2 first-time coordinators, going all the way back to 2022, something again we've beaten the dead horse on. But we want to make sure too that this guy never forgot how to coach football, and the guy is an outstanding defensive coordinator, proven. He's a very good recruiter, proven. He's a very good linebacker coach, proven. So so now we're going to have a staff with him like Coach Chaos, Sean Spencer, who I'm going to talk about next. Being able to steal him from Mike Elko that's like getting Norvell McKenzie from Georgia Tech. I mean, but you're talking about a guy who's got some NFL pedigree that also has, the last time he was paired with Brent Pry, they talked about it today, averaged 40 sacks a season. We're going to put some dudes in the dirt, and he brings the juice. He's got the energy. He's got the energy level. We're going to bring havoc, and those are the guys that he's going to recruit. He's going to recruit havoc makers. He's, that havoc rate that Sam and Pete like talk about all the time on Too Deep. We're gonna be the tops in the ACC as far as that goes. Kind of what Clemson used to have when they had like Brzee and those guys in there. Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to be like. That's going to be our goal.
And that talent, I'll say this on every podcast until I get to see everybody's reaction. Honestly, we'll probably see it spring game. Like, you'll probably see it at the spring game. The look of the team is going to be different. It's going to sound weird saying it. You're going to look at our defensive ends with pads on, and you're like, oh my God, like, we had never ever looked like that before.
And don't get me wrong, to go with that, I love APR, but APR versus the guys that we're going to see, APR was a stud in the ACC level. We're going to have Ruben Bain and Mesidor type dudes out there.
Yeah, and they're going to be coached up, and it's going to be a hair on fire type of defense. It is. I mean, look. Coach, you're a football guy. I'm a football guy. It's very hard to try to put into words what we're fixing to look at this fall. And that's not me necessarily saying we're going to go out and win every game in the fall. Like, obviously you have to win the games and there's a lot of work to do. I'm just saying, like, the rate of change that you're seeing with like our facilities and other things, like, you're going to see that in the type of athlete that is lining up on Saturdays. So that's really what I'm leaving it at.
And it's if you're down by the Frank Beamer statue and you're watching these dudes get off the bus, I was always a big get off the bus guy. Like, I always had my linemen get off the bus first. Like, that's who you want to see. Like, those are the people that are going to put fear in your opponent and fear in your opposition. Get them off the bus. So, but I agree with you. We're going to look completely different across the board. But in addition to Coach Chaos, with a little bit of NFL pedigree, Anthony Midget coming over from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Virginia Tech legend, right? So he was the captain of the national championship that we played for the national championship in '99. So he's got all of the Beamer legacy there. He, working with Lorenzo Ward and all that crew that we had back in the day, knows Bud Foster's system. So Brent Pry knows him. So, from, when they were together, when he was a player here, you're going to be able to get dudes to come in and play that safety room and say, okay, well, this guy's coached coach guys in the pros that play my position. So he knows what I'm going to need to do, what I'm going to need to get to, what level I got to be at in order to be able to play on Sundays from this position. Not only that, he loves the school. He left an NFL job to come back here. That says so much, just in and of itself. Vic Hall. And, there was a little tongue in cheek there. He said, I know we didn't want to get guys from UVA in here, but and I love that. He's getting it, right? But he's coming in to be the defensive recruiting coordinator, kind of like Fontel Mines, right? You got a guy who's got Virginia roots. He's true to the Commonwealth. He's going to be coaching nickelbacks. Hopefully not the band, right? But these guys in today's game, where you're seeing so much 4 and 5 wide, your nickelbacks, your bigger corners that can help in the run game, those guys they have to have their own coach now. We used to have the Whips and Rovers, back in the Bud Foster days. It was the Whips and Rovers coach. But these guys are such a valuable player, and they play such a different game than your true corners. Your true corners got to play outside on the island. They're doing a lot of one-on-one coverage. Sometimes if you're playing zone to one side and you're playing man to the other, you could rotate. You could be doing a lot of different things. These guys got to be able to cover slot receivers, but also be able to step up in the run game and help. And these are kind of your freaks on defense. This is your Spencers, your Caleb Spencer type guys. I think that can do a lot of different things. But having him there to be able to help recruit on the defensive side of the ball specifically, and then you're also working specifically with that position, I think that's going to be huge. And then also bringing in Perry to coach corners, who is from the Nick Saban tree, right? Played for Nick Saban in Alabama, who is probably the best of all time as far as coaching defensive backs. Right. Yep. There are, and so you're coming from that tree, and you're going to be able to take some of those lessons. And he's young enough to be able to speak in the vernacular of some of these young kids that are going to be coming in. But you're going to be able to teach those lessons in the kids' vernacular. I think it's going to be phenomenal. I think that's a very, very underrated position. We're going to see a massive upgrade in cornerback play. Defensive back play has always been a staple at Virginia Tech, and I think we're going to get back to that. Having Midget there and having Perry there, I think it's going to be a phenomenal step up from where we have been in the past.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind too, I mean, we got some of this from the end. Like, I really do wish that you could go out and you could see who some of the other conversations we were having with. Like, we had heard about the Michigan defensive backs coach that we had talked to. And then we also heard about Torian Gray, that he was heavily, I don't want to say interested, but pursued by this staff. And here's the difference. So many times in Virginia Tech's history, and who knows where they stack ranked on like who was talked to first and whatnot, but the fact that we swung 4 certain names and ended up with a name you're going to be really excited about. Like, again, Tech's playing for keeps, and we haven't played for keeps in a long, long, long time. Mm-hmm. So, there were a lot of names thrown out for a lot of these different position groups. Like, I mean, running back, I think a lot of people would have been happy with retention at that position group. You go out and you get a guy like Norval McKenzie. You think about the defensive back room, and it's like, oh, man, like, did we miss out like with this Michigan situation? No, you brought in a national champion winning defensive back who learned under, who was with Bobby Petrino and who was with Nick Saban. Like, it's just, man, top to bottom, it is such a good staff and so well-rounded and so many great personalities too. Like, you think about how many different types of kids that you talk to now. When the money is similar, it comes down to, can you develop me and get me into the league, and do I have a good relationship with you? And every one of those guys check those boxes.
Well, and I think the other thing too, we got a guy from Georgia who's been in Georgia. We got a guy who's been in Arkansas. We've got a guy who's been in Texas. We've got a couple coaches who've been in LSU, been in Louisiana, been in Florida. Talk about the footprint and then expanding and getting national. That's what we've done with this staff. This is a national staff. This is no longer the the good old boy network we're just going to hunker down and develop Virginia kids. That doesn't work anymore, unfortunately. You're not going to get a 2-star John Engelberger and make him a draft pick anymore. You're going to have to go out and get some of these guys that are nationwide level, national level, top 300 247 recruits. And I think we have that staff. Now, in addition, just like on the offensive side, we don't have as many, but we do have quite a bit of extra help with a couple of key pieces that are Virginia Tech holdovers. Like Jaron Gaveo-Winslow is going to be helping Anthony Midget with the safeties. I think that is huge. That's a guy who's wanted a position like this for a long time, and he's going to have a chance to really again. Because like I said, he was on the staff previously, but he's going to get a chance to do it again. We have Josh Conklin, who's going to be just an analyst for us, but he was an FCS head coach at Wofford. He was an analyst for Coach Prime in Colorado. He coached special teams at Arkansas State. So a super well-rounded coach that is another former head coach that's going to be helping there. And I mentioned Danny Rocco before, but Danny Rocco is going to be helping out on that side, on the defensive side of the ball, analyzing the opposition's offense. That's unreal, right? That's just unreal having that guy here. Braden Dayvault Smith, who's a Vandy grad, who is going to be helping out with the defensive backs. Jan Johnson, who is a former NFL player, Penn State alum, who's going to be helping Coach Pry with the linebackers. Derek Tangelo, who's a Duke alum, played in the CFL, who's going to be helping out with the defensive line. We have guys across the field with legit pedigrees that are going to be working with this staff. And that's why the top, depending on who you look at, we're anywhere from top 5 to top 15 overall recruiting class. That's why we're able to get these guys. We have a staff that has a proven track record and say, hey, look, you come here, this is where I can get you if you put in the work. And go ahead.
And don't forget either, Coach Pry was able to pull together a recruiting class that climbed like 70 spots in 3 weeks without having this staff in place. Can you imagine what what it's going to be like to walk into these living rooms now with this Avengers type team of coaches that are coming in here? And if you're I'm just thinking about even just these visits. If you're an offensive lineman and you come in and you're on your visit, if we're checking the boxes for the money, which we know is a huge component of this, and if you're in the ballpark, that's great. You're now not running into the problem of I visited Miami and I know that I'll be developed and taken care of there. You're an offensive lineman, you're in a film session yourself with 3 coaches who are running through cut-ups and talking about the players that they've coached and the experiences that they've had. By the way, this is the guy who is scouting defenses ahead of time. Here's what those look like.
Yep.
Again, it's just checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. And I'll say this too. The rate at which these coaches are recruiting and where they're going, Coach Pry said this a little bit on the little video that they put out. It seems like there's it seems like there are 5 or 8 different high schools every day in the state of Virginia. He was asked, I think Ryan asked Coach, he was like, are there any guys that have stood out since all of the guys arrived on campus? And he goes, literally, they've spent 4 days with the guys that have gotten in because he said, we have been out recruiting and avoiding the weather. By avoiding the weather, he means they're leaving town and getting away from the snow and recruiting players who are not in the snow to make sure they're not snowed in Blacksburg. It is just, again, apples and oranges, man, on what they're doing. They're packing their bags like Tom Hanks, just don't get stuck on the island, and they're gone. They're just out here talking to every recruit on the Eastern Seaboard.
Well, I think the biggest part about that too is that you're seeing what's going to be the foundation for this program, which is going to be the reliance on developing high school talent versus just living in the portal. I think the portal's going to have its place. I think our program is going to end up not as drastic as Clemson as far as, ignoring the portal. We're going to still get pieces where we need it, and and things like that. They're going to be instant help. But I think a key component to this whole thing is going to be how we go out and bring high school kids in and then develop them, and they're here for 2 or 3 years. And and we keep them here for an extended period of time, let them grow, let them develop in the system, and we get a team that is Miami level or Indiana level, just using those as examples, where you got an older roster that's going to be able to just literally manhandle the kids from some of these other schools that they're going up against. And it makes all the difference in the world if you can only use the portal when necessary and not have to rely on it for your entire roster. And
real quick,
so I think that's going to be big.
Just a clarifying point, because I did say Island and Tom Hanks. I was very obviously referring to the movie Castaway, because we do have islands in the news. So I'm just going to mention that I was talking about Castaway and Wilson, not to be aggregated. But who else do we have on? Who else do we have on our staffs here?
All right, so going on to the special teams side, I really liked listening to what Doug Scherer had to say. Coming in from UConn, he looks like a dude where this isn't just something extra that he does. This is a dude that is that lives and breathes special teams. He talked about his background a little bit. He said, "Hey, I didn't play college ball. I didn't play college ball. I loved it. I came on as a student assistant and then worked myself up to a GA, and then work because this is something I've always wanted to do." And he's made it all the way up the ladder. And you only do that if you're not a player. You only do that through hard work. Yeah. Hard work and being
good too, and being good, because I got to tell you, like you mentioned, it is a very much a good old boys network on, he played for me, or he played for a guy that I know, and everything else. If you are somebody who did not play football at the collegiate level and you are a collegiate coach, especially at his age, you got to be doing something right. And again, I think I think this is probably the one hire where if you're just like, special teams coordinator from UConn, like it'd be very easy. I encourage you to go read what other people are saying about what they were doing at UConn. Because if you're just doing the thing where you look at the name and where he came from, you may consider this a little bit of an underwhelming hire. What I also really appreciated about this is, and this speaks to Coach Franklin being very aware of the narratives and what is said around his program. He knows special teams was a problem last year. He is fully aware of that, and he is fully aware that the fan base is fully aware of that. And he mentioned it when he was talking. He said a lot of programs say that it's lip service, and it is not going to be lip service at this program. So I also really appreciated about Coach Scheer. He went out of his way to speak about the leadership and kind of like what kind of guy John Love was. I think a lot of people, number one, John Love had I don't want to call them struggles, because he didn't kick a lot towards the end of the year, because we weren't in a position where we were in close games to kick field goals. And I'll also say, we were kind of worried. We were like, is John Love going to be playing his last year of college football at LSU or Georgia or Miami, competing for a national championship? And obviously, it was compelling enough to keep him here. So, you cracking up a LaCroix? What are you sipping on over there, brother?
That's a garage beer, man. Garage beer. There you go. supporting the Kelseys.
So I got to tell you, man. I'm fired up about him, and I'm fired up about everybody that spoke. Like, you knew what you were getting out of Franklin, you knew what you were getting out of Pry, but what I really appreciated was from Coach Howley and Coach Hal and Coach Scherer. They're very genuine. Like, what I appreciated was, you're so used to like coach speak. I really don't get that from anybody. Like, you didn't get it from Pry, because he couldn't coach speak his way out of like the topic that we were talking about. It was very raw, and like, he's not really like that kind of guy. And then from Coach Franklin, I've heard from so many Penn State people how like, well, he's this way. And look, he definitely has his quirks. Like, the word obviously, or any word with 4 or more syllables, you're going to get an over enunciation. But he's so intentional, and I genuinely enjoyed listening to each one of these guys speak. And you could tell, especially with Hal and especially with Scherer, they're interested to learn the media member's name. I think they want to have a good and healthy relationship with the media members at Virginia Tech, as long as they, ask how people are doing and answer when asked that question. So I don't know where I was going with that, other than I think they're all extremely personable and not bullshitters.
No, I agree. I think they were completely upfront with, hey, these are what our expectations are for this particular section of the team. But then I thought one of Franklin's funniest comments that I didn't hear anybody really talk about, where you start talking about, well, we're going to try to be a little bit more transparent with you guys, and because I know you're just going to FOIA it anyway. He kind of that was kind of a little Doug Bowman slam there.
A little shout out to Doug, man. No, that was funny, and I also think I think some people will hear this and be like, oh, like, is he trying to have state-run media? And I don't take it this way at all. When I was talking to Ryan about this, I'm talking about the end of when Franklin was speaking. He was saying, hey, we're going to open some more opportunities for you guys. My ask is just like, don't take it as an expectation, but you have a job to do, and I want to give you guys some access to the program. But he labeled it kind of as like, yo, don't think it's an expectation. We want you guys to do coverage that's good for us. I think that's basically a way of saying, like, look, I know you guys all live here, and I know you guys got to do your job, but if you betray the trust, basically, like, the only way that you're not going to get access is by doing some of that, for lack of better terms, cover your kids' ears, henhouse shit, right? He's like, look, we're going to help you if you guys not help us because you got to do your job, but at the same standpoint, don't kind of betray that. Don't take advantage of what we're trying to do here.
Don't go out of your way to be negative intentionally. There's no reason to nitpick at this stage of the game. We're gonna
happened, by the way. There has been a tendency in sports journalism in general and around here. But to be fair to all of the journalists at Virginia Tech, hasn't been a whole lot to be super jazzed about. So it's a clean break, clean startup, right? So.
Yeah. So there's just one last thing I wanted to head on with the staff. Chuck Losey, who is the strength and conditioning guy, who's got the best mustache in the game, just
certainly looks the part.
FYI, just awesome. Just looks like he left like the world's biggest CrossFit gym and got his and got everything all curled up here.
He looks like somebody who discovered steroids during the Peaky Blinders era. Like, that's kind of what it looks like to me. Like, he was the only dude that was doing bench press during Peaky Blinders.
But obviously, he did such a good job at Penn State. He wanted to bring him in over from Penn State. But the fact that we were able to keep Jarrett Ferguson, and the words that were spoken about him and what they've done with him in the weight room, I believe that was actually on Ryan's question that he asked, and they talked about all the feedback they were getting from the work that's being done in the weight room. Keeping that guy in the building where he's no longer the head of strength and conditioning, but you're able to say, okay, you're such an important, valuable piece to Virginia Tech. We want you to stay here. That is just... that might be one of the biggest wins of this entire staff, is keeping that guy here. And not to mention, you got 3 other assistants that were able to come over from Penn State, Futrell, Fleury, and Earls. Fleury also had stints at Indiana and with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Earls, who's got just a laundry list, he's been at not only Penn State, Texas Tech, Tulane, Purdue, Texas, LSU, then also with the Cleveland Browns and the Oakland Raiders. So we got guys that, hey, this is what you're expected to do, and we have a full unit of, no pun intended, because some of these dudes, you've seen their pictures, they're units. Oh, yeah. And that are going to be able to get these guys ready to go, rocking and rolling, and just, I think, as big as of a strength and conditioning piece as we know that is needed at Virginia Tech, having 5 guys in this room that are going to be able to just get things right. Like I said, walking off the bus is going to look completely different. One thing that I always look at, and it's going to sound weird to say, so if you got to hit the pause button, hit the pause button. It's going to sound weird. When I look at a sideline, I look from mid waist to knees, right? And I can tell what team is going to out physical us from the midsection to the knees. If you got hips and ass, we're in trouble. Like
if you got a high ass, kind of like a oh man, what's like kind of the way that a praying mantis looks like, or kind of just. This is a weird football conversation, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And also to the other point, I mean, I think this was Coach Signetti that was talking about this. It's massive, massive quads, and then it slims down to that ankle. You don't want any of that cankle situation, especially with your big guys. I mean, we can do a whole episode on we were talking about body language doctor. We could do body build doctor on what you're looking for at each position. But man, again, like to wrap this all up at a bow. Really good cast of characters, really good cast of guys that are, number one, high character, and two, very relatable. A lot of extrovert, a lot of experience, a lot of, this person isn't really reaching to be in this position, and plenty of help too. Like, you're not going to have somebody who, if they do need something or they do need a second opinion, I mean, these guys, it's not a situation where the entire Penn State staff has moved over to Virginia Tech. It's a lot of them have come over here, but you're also getting those second opinions from guys that have played for Nick Saban, that have coached in the NFL, that have coached in Canada, have played in the NFL. Like, there's just such a wealth of knowledge and experience that is coming over here. And it's, again, I could talk about it till I'm blue in the face. Get excited. Get excited.
Yeah. And I think just the end result, if I had to help you put a bow on this, we put our nuts on the table, right? Oh, literally and figuratively. We went and asked the Board of Visitors for all this extra money, and we went out and said, we got to get this coach, and we put everything out on the table to do this. And this is what you get when you do that. Now is the time from here until first week of September. This is where all that extra work goes in to make sure that, everything looks right on paper. We talked about the talent floor rising, the staff is here, it's in place. Now what are we going to do? And so, Witt has put his job essentially on the line, and said, we are finally putting everything into football. This is what we probably should have done a decade ago. But, ifs and buts or candies and nuts to be Christmas every day. We're here right now. And so, yes, has it sucked to be a Virginia Tech fan for the last decade? Yes. It has, can we get to the point? I think it's going to be sooner rather than later, with, and I'm not counting all my chickens. I'm also saying, hey, we got to be cautiously optimistic. It's not going to be an overnight turnaround. But in today's college football landscape, look at Indiana. It can be done. And I'm not saying that we're going to be Indiana, but I'm also saying that we could be. Mm-hmm. So it's if everything falls into place. We got a guy who can spin it, who honestly, Fernando Mendoza when he was at Cal, he was good, but was he this Fernando Mendoza? No. So sometimes it takes a change of scenery. Was Grunkmeyer at Penn State? I'm not saying he is, but there's comparable abilities there as far as being able to make throws and things like that. So it starts with your offensive line. It starts with your quarterback. We got guys that can coach them up. We got players now in the building that are going to be a step above from previous rosters. I'm again cautiously optimistic. Yeah, but I think the ingredients are there to make good things happen.
Without a doubt. Coach, I appreciate it. So that's a recap of the staff that's coming in. We talked a little bit about the presser. We're going to do some more film breakdowns. I really appreciate all the feedback that we've gotten off of that first one. And I know that you have some cool tech that's coming in, which is exciting. So number one, if you do have any suggestions or things you'd like to see us run through, do let us know. I'll go ahead and link the previous one there. We went through a couple of looks that we're expecting to see from the James Franklin offense. But Coach, what are we going to be doing next, and what's to come?
So I think the next one we're going to do is just kind of I want to make sure that you guys that are watching this, some of you guys may not be as well versed in all of the X's and O's. So I want to make sure you have kind of a base vocabulary, and so it'll be like a vocabulary lesson. We'll talk about defensive techniques. When you hear like a 3 technique, what does that mean? Or a 4-eye, what does that mean? We talk about how to number the holes and the gaps on the offensive side of the ball. Some basic coverages. What's cover 1? What's cover 1 with a robber? What's cover 2? What's cover 3? What's cover 8 when you have trips to one side and you're playing man on the backside? What does that look like? So little things like that, and it'll be easy to show drawing it out, but hopefully you'll get kind of a better idea of just basic fundamentals, and then that way we can dig into a little bit more. We can say, okay, hey, we'll go back and look at some of Bud Foster's greatest hits on defense, and we can say, oh, he's playing an over 4-man front, and he's got cover 0 on the back end, and so exactly what we're talking about if you had seen that previous video. So, so again, we can get a little bit more into some of the nitty gritty there.
Coach, appreciate your time. Enjoy your rest. Thanks for jumping on after that flight, and we'll be talking again soon. The next one we'll do probably either this week or next week. And go Hokies.
Absolutely. Go Hokies.